NIO's sales down 22% as Tesla enters the Chinese market is our story for today. And this process is called catfishing. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters. Your assistance is greatly appreciated in the health and growth of the channel. And we appreciate you. If you enjoy, please take time to like and subscribe. So our conversation today focuses on the fact that there's this Indian concept that says that there are 5 blind men. Each of those blind men were trying to describe an elephant on how it looked, but each of those blind men was holding a different part of the elephant. So as a result, they were all right in their assessment of what it looked like, but they were all coming from different angles. And the result was an inconsistent perspective on what the elephant looked like. In this case, we wanted to bring this up because there was actually, if you'll check on March 2nd, 2021, there's actually a CNBC story about Tesla, and it focuses on the fact that there's a board member named Steve Wesley who comes on, a former board member of Tesla who came on and was discussing the challenges that Tesla's having in different markets. In this case, the suggestion that with new competition, their European sales are down. Now, this is very interesting because it just seems as though CNBC has a thing going for Tesla where if anyone is bringing bad news, they get plenty of press time. If they're bringing good news for Tesla, they seem to get bad, sort of large amounts of coverage. And so I think this is an example of that. And I think that what's going on in China right now shows a contrast to this. So we have a story idea that we've been pursuing for quite a while regarding catfishing. The head of the government agency in China that focuses on electric vehicles introduced a concept to us called catfishing. And basically, there was a ship captain in Norway who noticed that when he brought in sardines that were dead, there's a certain price he got. He got a higher price if those sardines were alive. So what he did was he discovered that if he stuck a catfish inside of the pen, most of the sardines would stay alive and he would get a higher price. And so this concept is called catfishing, and this is the idea that the Chinese government came up with, which is why they chose to bring Tesla in and help them set up manufacturing. So for today's discussion, we're kind of focused on a headline that hit the South China Post yesterday regarding the fact that NIO's sales have dropped 22% based on the entry of Tesla with the Chinese-made Model Y, A and B, because that vehicle had come in at $42K. With the subsidies, it's in that $38,000 range. And my ears kind of ringing with one of the comments made by one of the buyers who indicated that they were canceling NIO purchases in order to buy Teslas. And they indicated that with the price so cheap, they had no choice but to buy. So I think there's more to that consumer's comment, and what they're saying is that the value we get in Tesla is so high that if we have a choice between, if you will, a higher price competitor and a better reputation, better infrastructure Tesla, there's no doubt who wins that buying discussion. And this is one of the reasons why there were no cars to be sold in this quarter remaining, because everything had been ordered that was produced in China by Tesla. So we're kind of intrigued also by NIO because obviously they went public. The stock has been doing pretty well. But as Tesla's catfishing of them occurs, I was encouraging folks that I knew that I thought that NIO was a really bad place to put your money, because I really felt that for a bunch of reasons, as Tesla enters with a low-priced SUV, it really puts a lot of pressure on NIO, and they've dropped 22% in sales for this quarter, and they're talking about making moves to address Tesla's incursion. But I wouldn't be stunned to see, as Tesla broadens its footprint, not only just in the area of the sort of 10 or so cities that they're starting off with when they shipped, but as they get full country footprint for the Model Y that's built in China, and they're at the price point they're currently at, and then we have the onslaught of the next vehicle for $25K, I just think Tesla ends up being a huge company in China, and I think China ends up, it was a third of sales last year in 2020, but I think it ends up being at least 50% of sales heading into 2021. So I'm fascinated by this circumstance. So Tesla and NIO actually have a very interesting working relationship, because where Tesla's plant was installed is actually a facility that was supposed to go to NIO. And after the government signed their deal with Tesla, they decided to give Tesla or sell or lease Tesla the production space that currently has in Shanghai, and then had NIO sharing manufacturing space with a sort of government-controlled economic entity. So the plot between the two companies, I think, is rather thick and intense, and I believe that where sales have gone with Tesla's initial presence in China is just a warm-up for what we're going to see. For those of you who are NIO investors, NIO's down 22%, and I think that their revenue, they had 5,400 cars for the month of February. I believe they're going to see another 22%, so a 50% cut in their monthly car sales as the China factory in Shanghai ramps. So I think that for most companies, if you're, down 50%, 60% in sales, you'd be nearing bankruptcy. But because there's a state-owned entity to this, I think they'll stick around. But I think that this whole catfish process that was set up by the Chinese government is really interesting, because we're now seeing it start to hit in what's going on. The one problem I'm seeing from CNBC, from us and everybody else, is there's a concept called the network effect in business, which means, for example, if you have an Apple computer and you have family members and you're enjoying your machine and you share your logic with that family member, well, what starts to happen is you end up with a phenomenon where you share that knowledge with your family member, and then you might have neighbors that have been watching. Let's say you're in China and you have a neighbor that owns a Tesla, and you have been impressed by what it was delivering, but the price point was too high. Well, all of a sudden the price point drops within range of what you can afford. So the question is, do you say to yourself, I'm just going to buy the NIO or XPeng or any of the other Chinese manufacturers, or do I buy a Tesla? And so this is called the network effect. And in the case of Tesla, with its supercharger throughout the country, which is a de facto advertising medium, they're building new facilities. I guess they're going to build 10,000 new chargers this year in China. So basically, Tesla has a massive de facto advertising campaign that's operating through current owners, that's operating via the clear signs of how they're well set up to handle the needs of those customers when it comes to electric vehicles. I just think that this is a complete disaster for the domestic manufacturers, even the ones that are public like NIO, and they're really stuck scrambling, trying to figure out how to deal with the Tesla onslaught. So yes, the Chinese government came up with this catfishing idea we discussed, and it's a win-win for the Chinese government, because if 100% of the vehicles produced in China, the work that goes with this vehicle is going to be either from Tesla or from the other manufacturers, but the country kind of wins. So it kind of makes sense why they would do a catfishing process in this manner. But I'd have to say that the big losers, the big winners is Chinese government and China in general. The big losers is all the investors in the United States and elsewhere that are part of these companies as Tesla comes in and runs them over. One other data point that we identified from our research was that if you do some research to figure out what companies in the electric space, used car dealers in Beijing and some of the other major cities are willing to deal with, they'll deal with Mercedes, Audi, all these other vehicles, but the only electric vehicles they're willing to buy and resell is Tesla. So another back-end marketing piece to this is that after 3 years, Tesla is in that 60% of value zone, whereas the domestic makes that everyone is saying should wipe Tesla out are landing in that 25% of value after 3 years zone. So there's just endless amount of marketing data to support how and why Tesla is successful in China and ends up totally catfishing and wiping out a number of firms and putting them in such a low sales position that they likely have to get a government bailout to stay in operations. And so I think that it shows why being well invested in Tesla is actually smart, because eventually the Chinese companies will find a combination of price and performance that allows them to be effective in the marketplace. But clearly with the decline in sales we're seeing now with NIO, it really gives you a back-end view of how the consumers are viewing things. So I also love mentioning, Bob Lutz and the fact that there are a lot of people who can build and put a car out. The next question though is, what are the key sets of performance that define that vehicle? And are those individuals or companies able to go head to head with Tesla once it enters the market space with its best effort in the form of the vehicle provided, an SUV versus a sedan, and then B, form factors like what's the price point like? Because we're seeing, a sellout of Chinese Model 3s despite lower performance, because it's striking at a price point that fits the budget of a broader number of people. So I wanted to bring all this up today because I continue to be amazed at the ability of places like CNBC to shape investor viewpoints on Tesla and its success. And there's a welcome effort to deliver, if you will, bad news in the form of, hey, there's some decline in sales in Europe possibly, but kind of no discussion of when it is that Tesla definitely shows off its best capabilities in the form of what's going on with sales in China. So we'll definitely keep you posted on this. I think this whole catfishing phenomenon is a worthwhile one to watch, because most countries like Germany or England or elsewhere typically are trying to protect domestic manufacturing, not help competitors build a factory and come in and catfish the domestic makes. And so I was intrigued because among the comments made regarding Tesla and CNBC yesterday was the fact that GM and another company had partnered together on a $5,400 electric vehicle that was outselling Tesla 2-to-1. And I thought this was fascinating because the vehicle that was presented is like a two-person vehicle that has been, it's a 100-mile range type vehicle that's consistent with what's been available in around the world, but particularly in Asia for the last 30 or 40 years. And, the very short range, very inability to carry anything. In fact, when it came to the SUV, one of our sort of show advisors, Paul, lives in China, and he pointed out that without the SUV, Tesla would have a really tough time, because China is a country of multi-generational families. And so you really need the SUV to be able to handle the 3 generations within one vehicle. So he predicted that the Model 3 would sell well, but nothing like an SUV would sell because of this multi-generational process that the Chinese typically do. So going back to the 2-seater vehicle for $5,400 that was mentioned by CNBC, that vehicle is selling very well, but the challenge is, how does that carry the multi-generational process we described? Not to mention very high real estate prices and the fact that you need a vehicle that one vehicle that can handle multiple situations when it comes to moving people around, and you have a very high cost of parking and real estate in general. So I bring all this up to say that I fully expect Tesla to continue to draw fire from CNBC. Without Bob Lutz there, they've been really hunting for Mr. Johnson and others to try to find something bad about Tesla that they can report on. But I would be very surprised if they actually confirmed or discussed the fact that NIO sales dropped by 22% when Tesla entered. And I would think that for a normal company, if their sales drop by 50%, which I think is another couple of months away, you would end up with them in bankruptcy. But that I don't think will happen because of how the Chinese government works to sort of prop up entities that it's in favor of. So basically, I think the decline in NIO's sales gives us a little bit of a window of how well the Model Y is doing in China, and therefore how well we're going to see Tesla doing in that marketplace. And I think this is going to be entertaining to watch Tesla's inbound sales and revenue, because we don't get a lot of windows on what's going on with China sales for Tesla that are easy to define, other than seeing what the numbers are at earnings. But I think it's going to be pretty exciting if you're a Tesla investor, because I think it's a precursor of what happens when that Chinese Y hits Europe, and then Tesla follows on with that price point that brings it into the heart of where all the sales of vehicles might be. At any rate, I want to thank you for taking time out to listen in on our dialogue regarding Tesla catfishing NIO successfully in China, and then going after other competitors in a similar fashion. I guess one could say that there's a little bit of a surprise with this catfish, because if you look at cattle and a list of the companies that are attached to it in terms of who they're selling to, it's a bit of a surprise that Tesla is able to use the battery that they are and have similar structure being used by other firms, but Tesla is able to sort of grab sales and keep prices down in a manner that they're doing. So we look forward to reporting more on this. The next thing that we wanted to note is our health tips. Please remember your 25 leg lifts a day. I think I'm going to do mine as I close out today. So I wanted to encourage you to consider 25 leg lifts a day as a way to strengthen quad muscles, reducing the chance of knee issues. Also wanted to encourage you to consider the 2-5 or one of the other diets that are focused on mental health driven by fasting. Also wanted to encourage you to consider no more than once a week fried foods. Also wanted to encourage you to not go to bed within 4 hours of eating to let the food digest, minimum 2 hours. And also we wanted to encourage you to consider a 30 or better SPF. Playing in instruments, particularly because we're so isolated with COVID, or learning how to play one, great idea. Another sort of mental health management process. At any rate, I wanted to say that we're looking forward to constructive comments, and we'd encourage you to take time to like and subscribe. Tschüss, German au revoir, French Lehitro, Hebrew Choda Hafez, Farsi Strazviche, Russian Ni Hao Ma, Chinese Konbawa, Japanese Hey Do, Swedish G'day, our friends in Australia. And in Jamaica we say, enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.